Ice cream, logical cream, flavors. Let's make a move, get away, what's your flavor? Tell me what it is again. What you like, get it twice, what's your style? Let's get crazy, let's get lit, let's get wild. Take you out, show you off, what's your flavor? Tell me what it is again. Anywhere in the world, take you mild. Show me the real, you go and let it out. Your flavor, vanilla mix on brown cones, rainbow sprinkles on your AP two-tone. I ain't about materials, it's habitual for the infinity to get spiritual. I ridicule your decisions in the specimen. Make God like me, had to step up, be the better man. Baby, I know your flavor, green apple colored gators. I ain't a rich man yet, I'm gathering data. I'm saying.
What's going on? What's going on? It's your boy Igani. We're here on 95 South TV. Once again, first and foremost, want to thank God for this opportunity to be able to come on here and have great topics and great people. So, first and foremost, man, I want to get into a topic matter that I've been seeing lately, and this has been on my spirit all morning, and discussing basically pastors and the impact that pastors have on our society, our community, our families, and the church world. Just recently, we've seen people like T.D. Jakes involved in this whole Diddy scandal, allegedly maybe being part of that whole thing. And, I know when some people, when he supposedly had the heart attack or whatever it was during his service, a lot of people didn't think it was real. They thought it was staged. And to me, whether it was staged or not staged, whether it was real or fake, it's the lesser part of a bigger problem. And the bigger problem to me, when it comes to the whole thing in the world, because I feel like a lot of time pastors don't get held accountable for things that they do in church, or they don't get held to a certain standard. So earlier this year, when everything started to come out about T.D. Jakes and certain things were brought up, and then people would say, well, he's human. Everybody's allowed to make mistakes. And I get all that. But what's the whole point of having a pastor and being able to have leaders if your leaders are not held at a higher standard? I don't care what walk of life you're in. I don't care if you're a pastor. I don't care if you're a bank manager. I don't care if you're a restaurant manager. I don't care if you're a leader of your team, your basketball, football team. Everybody in walks of life has a role when you're in a leadership position. Your leaders are always held more accountable than your followers in any situation. I don't care what it is. Your leaders are always held more accountable. Why do I know this? When I was a restaurant manager, when things would happen in the restaurant wasn't clean, if we wasn't getting the food out on time, if our numbers wasn't looking like they were supposed to look as far as sales and things of that nature, they come to me. They don't go to the employee. They don't go to the guys working the fries. They don't go to the cash register. They come to the managers. We have weekly meetings discussing these type of things. So when they're dealing with pastors and their accountability, I think too many times when pastors, everybody's going to fall. We all human. But when pastors make this mistake, people in today's era seem to like just give them a pass. But the thing about it is the effect that it has on your church, it can be astronomical. You know what I mean? So I remember when years ago, my son, he stopped believing in God and church and all that. And we were going through a lot of stuff as a family, and he stopped believing. And we switched from one church to another church for that, and for other reasons too. But we switched to another church, and we got up under a church. I'm not going to say any names because God hasn't told me to reveal the person's name and the church that it was. But all I'm going to say is people who know. We went to a church. We had a female pastor, and over time, the church started feeling more like a cult, looking like a cult. The things that the pastor was asking us to do, we spent more time in church than we did anywhere else, almost work. Like we would get crucified by our pastor if we chose to go to work over coming to church. We would get crucified by a pastor if we would have revivals every other weekend. Sometime back-to-back weekends. And when I mean revivals, we would have 3-day revivals, Friday, Saturday, Sunday type revivals, a Friday service, a Saturday service, maybe 2 on Sunday. And then, and then we would have things. We have Bible study on Wednesday nights. And then, the kids might have practice for whatever they was doing that was involving the church and things of that nature. Or we would have food drives, or we would have go out and feed the community, which was all cool. But we probably would spend 5 or 6 days out of the week just living the church life part of it. And if you missed a service for whatever reason, you know what I'm saying, it came countermand. It came up this huge thing. This thing was you wasn't dedicated, and you get called out in the middle of service, and all your sins were brought up in service, and the whole thing. I remember one time, me and my kids and your mother, we got into a big thing at home, and it was brought. And then when we got to church that morning, you could see it on everybody's face. You could see it on demeanor. And then when we got to church, the pastor kind of brought it up in the middle of service, and I didn't really like that part. I didn't like that part of the whole thing. And what made me eventually, to make a long story short, what made me eventually end up leaving that church was because at the end, she blamed my kids for lying on her about something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she said my kids brought something, and my kids worshiped the ground she walked on. I ain't gonna lie. My kids worshiped the ground she walked on. And basically, because things started to happen before that time. So it was one situation where I remember my grandmother had just passed. And, I was grieving real heavy. I think my grandmother has passed. I want to say my great uncle, he had passed during that time. And at the moment I was going on vacation because I needed some vacation time. I needed to get away from everything with me and the family. And up to time, you know how it is. A lot of times, like before you go on vacation, you have to work extra hours, or you have to work longer, or you might have to pick up a day shift here and there to basically make up for the time that you're going to be gone. So I had to work up until the time it was time to leave. And I remember walking in the day we were going to the beach. We went to church that morning. And I remember after service, I walked up to hug the pastor. And the pastor says to me, "Oh, you can work. You can go to the beach and you can work, but you can't come to church." And she refused to hug me. And I'm just like, first of all, I could call you out on some things. First of all, during the whole time when my grandmother had passed, you did not call me and reach out to me at one time. You didn't offer to come to the services, even though they've been out of town. But I've seen you do it for other members where you would go out of town with them when people would pass. You didn't. The only person that reached out to me during that time was the deacon of the church, the head deacon of the church, and the elder. He was the only one that reached out to me as far as making sure that I was for good when it came. And my pastor knew how close my grandmother was to me. And not one time did she reach out to me to say, "Hey, how you doing? Do you need anything?" And then during that time when I'm going on vacation, so for me, that was one of those moments where, like, okay, it was one of those strikes that was along another strike. I'll give you another example. I was in we was like after church. I think it was after church, or might have been after Bible study. And we was having a meeting on, every time we would have like certain things, church, a lot of times you have to raise money for something. And the church would say, well, each family gives up a certain amount of money to go towards raising money for something. And I remember we were supposed to, as a family, give up like $72 per family. I forgot what we were raising money for. I think it was a trip or somewhere we was going or something. I can't remember exactly. But we was raising money like $72. And I'm one of those people in meetings when, a lot of times, I may ask questions, or I may question things about whatever it was. So I had asked a question, or I had put out, I had said something in the meeting, and my pastor didn't like it. And she said, well, just because you want to be disobedient or whatever, God told me to tell you to pay double. And I said, God ain't tell me that. God ain't tell me to pay double. I said, I'm paying this 72. I ain't paying no 144 just because you and your feelings about something that I said. And I remember the elder's wife said, just go ahead and pay. You know you're going to pay the money. My wife looked at me at the time, and she said, he ain't going to pay that money. I'm telling you now. I'm going to tell you how he not going to pay that money. And I didn't. I paid the $72 because at the end of the day, you're not going to use your power or your whoever you are as far as the apostle and basically, use that to try to manipulate people. Because she would always say in service, oh, Eddie done quit for about 50 times already. No, I ain't almost quit nothing, because if I'm going to quit something, I'm just going to quit it. I'm not going to keep playing around with y'all or playing around with you or other people. If I want to walk away from something, I'm going to walk away from something. But you know what I'm saying? But I would just to say this, that at times things can get really crazy in church services, and the leadership. I think a lot of times leaders, pastors got to understand when you're leading people, you can't lead everything. You can't be the same way with everybody. But I'm gonna take a quick break, and I'm gonna come back and go further into this discussion. Be right back here on 95 South TV. Okay, I'm back here on 95 South TV. We're talking about pastor accountability. So a lot of times when pastors are not held accountable or whatever, things can happen in churches where you'll cause people to leave a church. Because think about it, we know in life, the two times that people will leave something, or the one time we leave something quick as anything, is in church. Church is one of those things. If you loyal to that church, like a person who's been in a church, whether their family been going to that church for 30, 40 years, and whatever, for since the dawn of time, since Jesus was alive, they family going to that church for a long time. So either you've been going to that church for a long time, and no matter what happens, you've dedicated. I've seen that part of it. But see, y'all got to understand, for me, I grew up in a situation where, okay, my grandmother was a practicing Jehovah's Witness. It was crazy because my grandmother was a practicing Jehovah's Witness. And when you say, what you mean practicing Jehovah's Witness? So my grandmother, from the time I ever known, since I was a kid, until maybe about 2-3 years before she passed, she was practicing as a Jehovah's Witness, but she never joined until maybe 2-3 years before she passed. For whatever reason, she finally dedicated herself fully. And it could have been long. It could have been maybe like 3. I just know about 2-3 years before. It could have been a little bit longer than that. But I just know between the 2 and 3 year time span, she joined, the ministry. I can't, she's not here to say how long it was, because I'm pretty sure she would have known. But I'm just going to say 2 or 3 years before she passed, my grandma became a Jehovah's Witness. My mom has always been a Baptist. My grandfather was a Methodist. He was a deacon in the Methodist church. So my dad was a Methodist in the Methodist church. So for me, I kind of got a outlook on different types of walks of life and ideologies when it comes to church life. But I was never forced. I was one of those kids that wasn't forced to go to church every Sunday, forced to go to church every Bible study. Most of the time, one time we would think we was really made to go to church is if it was like Easter, Christmas, or something like that. It like, other times my mom would like, there might have been a few other times she might have made us go, but it wasn't all the time. It wasn't like a every Sunday thing that we was forced to go to church. So when I got older and seen people who I thought were real Christians, and I seen how they lived outside the church versus how they lived inside the church, it kind of threw me off, because I thought, okay, I'm going to be around people who are going to be able to raise me up as a baby Christian to come up and to see how things are. And so, but dealing it with different ideologies in church and seeing them all, I don't believe in religion. I think religion is one of the things that separates us as people. Not the only thing, but it's one of the people that separates us as people. And I don't mean like black folks. I mean people in general. It separates us as people. Whatever your thing is, Jehovah's Witness, Catholic, whatever. I don't, I don't get it all into that. That's your business. Whatever kind of makes you be a good person. I look at it like this. Whatever calls you to be a good person, And if it has been attached to do with your religion, that's cool with me. Now, the biggest problem I did have with Jehovah's Witnesses, one of my good friends, when we was childhood friends, we were kids. His mother got pregnant out of wedlock, and they ostracized her from the church for like a year. So I think it's like when certain sins that you do in church in Jehovah's Witness world, it's certain sins that you get suspended and you get removed from being able to have contact, and baby fellowship with your fellow Jehovah's Witnesses. And so to me, that that one thing right there turned me off from them completely. Because I'm like, if Jesus wouldn't do that, what may gives you the right to say that you can ostracize people from that? And then another turn off for me, and it was crazy because it was doing my grandmother's funeral, and the deacon, real good guy, man, but it kind of made me mad. But he was, and I get it, because I kind of agreed to a certain degree, but at the same time, I thought it was bad timing when he was basically in the service saying, like, when your loved ones die, there's no coming back as far as them, your spirit coming to see you and all of that. When their body is dead, it's dead. There's no thing where their soul or their spirit is gonna come and be a part of your life. And that's what they believe. They believe until judgment day, there's no coming back, no what so kind of spiritual thing that's going to, from what he explained to me, what explained in the sermon. That's kind of what he was saying, that once you're dead, that's it. You know what I mean? Now, some people believe that the spirit of the person comes talk to them, is in a room and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into all of that. But it just, to me, I felt like doing a funeral, that wasn't the moment to do that, because doing a funeral, you need to have all the comfort you can get to get through it sometimes. So if a person wants to believe that their grandmother, their mother, or their dad, or their sister, their brother is going to come to them in spirit and talk with them and be a part of their life and have their hand on them while they're going through certain trials and tribulations and things of that nature, if that's what they want to believe, then let them believe it at that moment, you know what I mean, or whatever. If that's what keeps them going, that's what keeps them going. But when the way he did it was like, basically he just kind of just crushed all kind of hope in the person ever seeing or being a part of your life again. And I didn't like that or whatever. So I think like that's another thing, like pastors sometimes got to be held accountable for what they say, what they do, how they are about members. My biggest thing, I'm gonna tell y'all straight up, my biggest thing about, because I was at a church in Atlanta, and the one thing about I enjoyed being in that church was that the deacons, and we had men's ministry, we had street ministry outreaches, we did a lot of things in the community. And the one thing about for me is that that was a big deal for me. And every church is different, because I remember the church that I was previously going to, and I'm not going to say why I'm not going there anymore. But believe me, it's a reason. But anyway, the church I was previously going to, they don't do outreach type stuff like that. They don't even really fellowship with other churches. They only fellowship with churches that were people like from church, like people they knew, they grew up with, like their church home from when they were kids or younger. But some churches are different. Some churches are fellowship with other churches, just to kind of build up a network of people they know and kind of grow the church. And in this particular church, like I said, they didn't do that. We did one, I think they did one or two outreach type stuff where they would go in the community and feed the community and things of that nature. Because I would always say that my big thing about any church is, if you're going to be a part of a community, then you have to reach out to the people in the community. You can't just be about the church, the business of church inside the building. The building is just what houses what you're doing, but that's not really church. Church is not what you're in. That's just you having church, but that's not church. Church is the people. Wherever you fellowship with the people, that's what church is. Not inside this building. And you can't preach on, oh, okay, well, yeah, we're just having church here, but then you don't go outside and deal with the people. and you're in their neighborhood where the people need you to be a part of what they're going through, but you're not being a part of it. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna give y'all a great example when we come right back here on 95 South TV. Okay, I'm back. So okay, so this church I used to go to in Atlanta, not the one I just previously was going to, but the one I was. This one probably haven't been part of that church in about 10 years, but I get to say there's a lot of great people there. Like I said, they fed the community every Tuesday and Thursday, where people come and get canned goods and food and stuff out of their pantry every week. One of most of my mentors came from that church. It's crazy because all my mentors that kind of raised me in the church world uh, were from that particular church, but all those men have passed away over the years, or whatever. So, and they were all older gentlemen, um, way older than me at the time, but they were like father figures to me when it came to being brought up in the church. Because dad had passed away in '08. So for me to have a father figure, those are guys that were there for me to show me, especially one guy. His name was Deacon Idaho, and Deacon Idaho is one of those guys who was epitome of how to carry yourself as uh, a deacon or somebody, a Christian in church. As far as I know, I never seen any negative discretions. I never seen him be one thing one way and something else at home. Wherever you seen with him was what you got. You know what I mean? And all the guys were like that. Like whether they were and it's funny because some of them weren't even holding it down in church. They was just them. And I'd rather you be authentic and real than I see one thing at church and then we go home and it's something else. Like I said, when I first got around, my first experience around so-called real Christians, and when I seen them at church, they were faker than a $3 bill. But then when we'd get home, it would be a whole different world. It would be chaos. It would be all kind of stuff going on. And so that kind of threw me off. But I'm gonna give you all an example. So we had a street ministry outreach one time, and it was me. I know it was a Reverend Green. Shout out to rest in peace, Reverend Green. Um, and it was a couple other guys. And we were in Atlanta. We weren't in the Bankhead area. Because I know at one time we was in the Bankhead. This particular time, I can't remember, but I know it was in one of the more poor parts of Atlanta. And we were in a parking lot. It was like an old grocery store parking lot. And we were making hot dogs and hamburgers, and had some gospel music going on. And these two guys walked by, and both they were basically crackheads. You know what I mean? And then we was like, yeah, guys, come over and get you something to eat. And the one guy, he was all for it. He was all for coming over there eating and whatever. His friend was like, no. He was like cussing us out, cussing his friend out. He was going off because all he was thinking about was that high. The one guy was like, shoot, I don't think I don't see it being a problem with us eating first on the way to getting high. So I just remember when the guys come out there and he was getting all belligerent and all up in our face and everything. And I ain't gonna lie, that at this time and point in my life, I was really, really like really sold out for Jesus. I was really involved in the church real heavy at that time, and I was really all in and whatever. So that was the Eddie in me who basically who didn't react. The old me would have reacted in a different way. Would have been one thing I will say. No matter how I look at things now, how I react to things was way different than how I would react to things before that time, especially. And so I remember the guy was being real belligerent, and he was all in our face, and then we were just talking to him calmly. Brother, we'll pray for you, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. And we were just talking to him. Then next thing I know, at that point, these guys went to crying. We was crying, they crying. And at the end, they ended up helping us break down, the stuff. It was time for us to go. They ended up staying out there long enough to help us break down and everything. And so that was probably one of the biggest moments when I seen the power of God. And the two things I learned: the power of God at that moment, and I learned that people, those two times when we was there, and we was in this other, and we was in a neighborhood that was in a Bankhead part of Atlanta, in an apartment complex. And I remember those two times I learned that people, and we used to go to uh, Macon, Georgia, and feed people at the park with my other church. But those times let me know that people just want to be seen. I tell people this all the time, and I had to tell my last church the same thing, that you can't be afraid of the people that you're supposed to be reaching out to. You have to show them love, because that's all they want. They want to be known, that people care about them too, that they can be seen too, that they are here to help. If you're just a church in a community and you're just there and you're not trying to basically, you're not trying to do anything. Um, if you're not trying to do anything to help the community, then what are you there for? You know what I'm saying? You know, and if you're not there to help the community, then what are you there for? If you're there just to say that you're there, then what's the whole point? The thing about it is, a lot of churches, what they do is they get into they get into a community. Uh, they get into a community, and then what they do is that they don't um hold on, because I gotta trying to bite my part all at the same time. I thought I was sending the link, but they get into a community and they don't do anything with the people. You know what I mean? They just there to kind of take or whatever. And so if you if you're in a community and people don't know you're there, then what are you doing?